The old cargo ship moved slowly toward the giant space station. Its name was Terra's Pride, and it looked like it had seen better days. The metal hull was dented and scratched. Patches of different colored metal showed where repairs had been made. Black marks from engine burns covered the back end of the ship. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his chair on the bridge and watched the station grow larger through the front window. Kepler Station was huge, bigger than any city on Earth. Hundreds of ships moved around it like insects around a bright light. Most of those ships looked new and shiny. They had smooth lines and glowing lights. Next to them, Terra's Pride looked like a piece of old junk. "Docking Bay 12 is ready for us, Captain," said Amy Rodriguez from her seat at the navigation controls. She was a small woman with dark hair tied back in a tight bun. Her uniform was clean but old, like everything else on the ship. "Thank you, Amy," Jake said. He was a man in his 40s with gray hair and tired eyes. His hands were rough from years of working on ships. "Pete, how are the engines holding up?" Pete Collins looked up from his engineering station. He was a big man with oil stains on his shirt. "They're running hot, but they'll get us docked. Might need to replace some parts while we're here." Jake nodded. Money was always tight, and ship parts were expensive. That was the life of an independent cargo hauler. You took whatever jobs you could find and hoped to make enough to keep flying. The ship shook slightly as it entered the station's docking bay. Through the windows, Jake could see other ships parked nearby. A sleek Zephyrian vessel sat in the next bay over. Its crystal-like hull caught the light and threw rainbows across the metal walls. Beyond that was a Vorthan trader ship, all curves and flowing lines like it had been grown instead of built. "Docking complete," Amy reported. "All systems are green." Jake stood up and straightened his jacket. "All right, everyone. You know the drill. We're here to drop off our cargo and pick up supplies. Keep your heads down and don't cause any trouble." The crew of 12 was small for a ship this size, but they were good people. Jake had worked with most of them for years. They knew how to handle themselves around aliens, even when those aliens looked down on humans. The airlock opened with a hiss of escaping air. Jake stepped out first, followed by Amy and Pete. The fourth member of their group was Dr. Lisa Hayes, the ship's doctor. She was a quiet woman who spent most of her time in the medical bay, reading about alien biology. The docking bay was full of noise and strange smells. Alien voices spoke in languages that sounded like music or grinding metal. The air recyclers worked hard to keep the atmosphere breathable for all the different species. Jake had barely taken 3 steps when he heard laughter. 3 tall figures stood near the bay entrance. They were Zephyrians, with bodies that looked like they were made of living crystal. Their faces were hard to read, but their body language was clear. They were pointing at Terra's Pride and laughing. "Look at that rust bucket," one of them said in accented English. "How does it even fly?" "Carefully, I would guess," said another. "One strong wind, and it might fall apart." Jake felt his jaw tighten, but he kept walking. He had heard worse things about his ship. Amy walked beside him, her face calm, but her eyes angry. They made it about 50 feet before running into more trouble. A group of Corvan warriors blocked their path. Corvans were big, gray-skinned aliens with ridges on their foreheads and sharp teeth. They wore dark armor and carried weapons that hummed with energy. The leader of the group was huge, even for a Corvan. His armor had gold markings that showed his high rank. Jake recognized him from the news reports. This was Admiral Vexcar, one of the Corvan Empire's top military commanders. "Well, well," Vexcar said, his voice deep and rough. "What do we have here?" More humans pretending to be real space travelers. Jake stopped walking, but kept his hands relaxed at his sides. "Admiral, We're just here to do business. Thexkar laughed, showing rows of pointed teeth. Business? What business could primitive apes like you possibly have here? Are you hauling garbage between your little mud worlds? The other Corvins laughed too. More aliens nearby stopped what they were doing to watch. Jake could see Vorthans with their tentacle faces, insect-like mantids, and even some species he didn't recognize. Our cargo manifest is on file with Station. Control, Jake said calmly. We're carrying rare minerals from the Centauri system to New Boston. Rare minerals? Thexkar moved closer. He was almost 8 feet tall, and his shadow fell across Jake like a dark cloud. I find it hard to believe that humans could mine anything more valuable than dirt. Pete stepped forward, his hands clenched into fists. Hey, watch your mouth, Scaleface. Amy grabbed Pete's arm before he could do something stupid. Thexkar's eyes gleamed with interest. He liked it when people got angry. It gave him an excuse to hurt them. Your pet monkey has spirit, Thexkar said to Jake, but no brains. Perhaps I should teach him some manners. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Other aliens backed away, sensing that a fight was about to start. Jake knew that if things went bad here, his crew would be in serious trouble. The Corvins had friends in high places, and humans were still newcomers to galactic politics. There's no need for that, said a new voice. Everyone turned to see a tall, elegant figure approaching. It was Station Commander Velthur, a Zephyrian with silver crystal skin and ancient eyes. Admiral Thexkar, surely you have better things to do than harass legitimate traders. Thexkar's expression darkened, but he couldn't ignore the station commander. Of course, Commander. I was simply curious about our human visitors. I'm sure you were, Velthur said smoothly. Captain Morrison, welcome to Kepler Station. I trust your journey was pleasant? Jake nodded, grateful for the interruption. It was, thank you. We're looking forward to doing business here. Velthur's crystalline features seemed to smile. Excellent. I do hope you'll find our facilities ... adequate for your needs. There was something in the way he said it that made Jake think the commander knew more than he was letting on. But before he could think about it too much, Thexkar spoke again. Tell me, human, the Corvin Admiral said, his voice full of mock curiosity. How exactly did your species learn to build starships? Did you find them lying around on your planet? Or did some other race take pity on you? The crowd of aliens had grown larger. They all wanted to hear the answer. Jake could feel their eyes on him, judging him and his entire species based on what he said next. We built them the same way everyone else did, Jake said quietly, with hard work and determination. Thexkar laughed so hard that his armor rattled. Hard work? Determination? You've been in space for what? 50 years? It took my people 1,000 years to perfect space travel. The Zephyrians needed 2,000. And you expect us to believe that you figured it out in a few decades? Maybe we're just fast learners, Amy said, her voice sharp with anger. Or maybe, Thexkar said, leaning down until his face was close to Jake's, you're lying. Maybe you stole the technology. Maybe you're nothing but thieves and pirates pretending to be civilized. The words hit Jake like a physical blow. Around them, the alien crowd murmured agreement. They looked at the humans with suspicion and contempt. To them, humans were just another primitive species that had gotten lucky. Jake wanted to tell them the truth. He wanted to explain what Terra's pride really was, what all the human ships really were. But he couldn't. Not yet. The time wasn't right. Instead, he just smiled and said, Think whatever you want, Admiral. We're here to trade, not to argue. Thexkar straightened up, disappointed that he hadn't gotten a bigger reaction. Very well. But mark my words, human. Your species' luck will run out someday. And when it does, The galaxy will remember what you really are." With that, the Corvan admiral turned and walked away, his warriors following behind him. The crowd began to break up, but Jake could still hear their whispered comments. Words like primitive and inferior, and how did they even get here? Commander Velther watched the humans with interest. "You handled that well, Captain." Many species would have responded with violence. "Violence never solved anything," Jake said, though his hands were still shaking slightly from anger. "Perhaps not," Velther agreed, "but it does reveal character, both in those who use it and those who choose not to." The commander walked away, leaving Jake and his crew alone in the docking bay. Around them, the business of the station continued. Ships came and went, cargo was loaded and unloaded, and deals were made in a dozen different languages. But Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. The way the aliens looked at them, the questions they asked, the suspicion. In their voices, it was getting worse. And sooner or later, someone was going to want real answers. He just hoped his crew would be ready when that day came. The commercial district of Kepler Station was a maze of shops, bars, and trading posts. Beings from dozens of different worlds walked the wide corridors, buying and selling everything from rare spices to advanced weapons. The air was thick with the smell of alien food and the sound of translators working overtime. Pete Collins walked alone through the supply section, looking for engine parts. His shopping list was long, and his budget was short. Every part he needed seemed to cost twice what it should. That was the problem with being human in alien space. Everyone saw you coming. He stopped at a shop that sold ship components. The owner was a six-armed mantid who clicked his mandibles when he talked. His prices were high, but his parts were good quality. "I need plasma regulators for a Class 5 engine," Pete said, reading from his tablet. The mantid's compound eyes studied him. "Human ship? Those engines are very old design. Very inefficient." "They get the job done," Pete said, trying to keep his voice friendly. "Perhaps you should upgrade to modern technology. I have beautiful Zephyrian engines that would triple your speed." Pete looked at the price display and nearly choked. One of those engines cost more than his entire ship was worth. "Thanks, but I'll stick with what I have." The mantid shrugged with four of his arms. "Your choice. But I do not understand why humans cling to such primitive technology. Are you afraid of progress?" Before Pete could answer, 3 large shadows fell across the shop entrance. He turned to see Corvan warriors standing in the doorway. They were not the same ones from the docking bay, but they had the same look in their eyes, the look of predators who had found easy prey. "Well, well," said the leader, a scarred Corvan with a metal patch over one eye. "What do we have here? A human trying to fix his broken toys?" Pete's hand moved to the tool belt at his waist. He wasn't a fighter, but he wasn't helpless either. "Just buying some parts. Nothing that concerns you." The Corvan laughed and stepped into the shop. His 2 companions followed, blocking the exit. The mantid shop owner suddenly became very interested in organizing his inventory. "Everything about humans concerns me," the Corvan said. "See, I've been thinking about what Admiral Dex Carr said, about how you primitives learned to build starships so fast. And I think I know the answer." "Oh, yeah." Pete tried to sound bored, but his heart was beating faster. "Yeah, you didn't build them at all. You stole them. Or maybe you found some crashed ships and figured out how to make them work. That's it, isn't it? You're just scavengers playing at being space travelers." The accusation hit Pete like a slap. He had worked on ships his whole life, had built his first engine when he was 12. Years old. The idea that humans were just thieves made his blood boil. "You don't know what you're talking about," Pete said, his voice tight with anger. "Don't I?" The Corvan moved closer. "Then explain it to me. How did a species that just discovered fire A few thousand years ago suddenly start building starships? How did you go from throwing rocks to traveling between stars? Pete wanted to tell him the truth. He wanted to explain about human ingenuity, about how they had taken alien technology and made it better. But he couldn't. The truth was classified at the highest levels. We're smart, Pete said simply. Maybe smarter than you think. The Corvin's single eye narrowed. Smart? You think you're smart? Let me tell you something, monkey. My people have been building ships for 2,000 years. We've conquered half the galaxy. And you think your little rust bucket makes you our equals? The tension in the small shop was getting dangerous. Pete could see the Corvin's hand moving toward his weapon. The shop owner had disappeared into a back room, not wanting to get involved. I don't want any trouble, Pete said, raising his hands. Slightly. Too bad. Because trouble is what you're going to get. The Corvin reached for his weapon, but before he could draw it, a new voice cut through the air. Is there a problem here? Everyone turned to see Amy Rodriguez standing in the shop entrance. She was small compared to the Corvins, but there was something in her posture that made them hesitate. Her hand rested casually on her sidearm, and her eyes were cold as ice. No problem, the scarred Corvin said. Just having a friendly conversation with your pet engineer. Looked pretty unfriendly from where I was standing, Amy said, stepping into the shop. Pete, you done here? Pete grabbed his purchased parts and moved toward the door. Yeah, all done. The Corvin leader blocked his path. Not so fast. We weren't finished talking. Amy's hand tightened on her weapon. Yes, you were. For a moment, nobody moved. The shop was dead quiet, except for the hum of the air recyclers. Then the Corvin laughed and stepped aside. Another time. Humans. Another time. Amy and Pete left the shop quickly, walking fast through the crowded corridors. They didn't speak until they were several blocks away. Thanks, Pete said finally. That was about to get ugly. What did they want? Amy asked. Same thing they all want. To know how we got so good at building ships so fast. They think we're thieves or frauds. Amy nodded grimly. It's getting worse. The questions, the suspicion. They're starting to figure out that something doesn't add up. Meanwhile, in another part of the station, Captain Jake Morrison was having his own conversation. He sat across from Commander Velthar in a quiet restaurant that served food from a dozen different worlds. The Zephyrian commander had invited him for what he called a diplomatic meal. I must apologize for Admiral Dexkar's behavior, Velthar sighed, his crystal features reflecting the soft light. He can be ... intense. He's suspicious, Jake said, cutting a piece of synthetic meat. They all are. Can you blame them? Velthar leaned back in his chair. Your species appeared on the galactic stage very suddenly. Most civilizations take millennia to develop space travel. You did it in decades. Jake met the commander's gaze. Maybe we had good teachers. Perhaps. Or perhaps you are simply more resourceful than anyone gives you credit for. There was something in the way Velthar said it that made Jake think the commander knew more than he was letting on. But before he could ask, the Zephyrian continued. Tell me, Captain, how long have you been running cargo? About 10 years, Jake said. Started with a small ship, worked my way up. And before that, Jake hesitated. His real background was classified, but he had practiced his cover story many times. I was in the Earth Defense Force, military transport. Pilot. Ah, a soldier. It explains your calm under pressure. Velthar sipped his drink, which glowed faintly blue. The military teaches discipline, among other things. Indeed. It also teaches strategy, the value of misdirection, the importance of appearing weak when you are strong. Jake's blood ran cold. Was the commander fishing for information, or did he actually know something? I'm not sure what you mean, Jake said carefully. Velther smiled, an expression that was hard to read on his crystalline features. Oh, I think you do. But don't worry, Captain. Your secrets are safe with me. For now. Across the station, Dr. Lisa Hayes was doing research in the public library. She sat at a computer terminal, reading about the history of spaceflight among different species. What she found was disturbing. Every major species in the galaxy had taken thousands of years to develop space travel. The Zephyrians had spent 2 millennia perfecting their crystal-based technology. The Corvins had built their empire over 3,000 years. Even the youngest spacefaring races had taken at least 500 years to go from their first rocket to interstellar travel. Humans had done it in less than a century. Lisa ran the numbers again, but they didn't change. By all the normal rules of technological development, humans should still be struggling to reach their own moon. Instead, they were shipping cargo between star systems and holding their own against species that had been in space for millennia. She found records of other species' reactions to human expansion. The early reports were dismissive. Humans were seen as a minor curiosity, a primitive species that had somehow stumbled onto space travel. But as the years passed, the tone changed. Confusion replaced dismissal. Suspicion replaced curiosity. Now, Lisa realized, they were approaching something much more dangerous: open hostility. She was so absorbed in her research that she didn't notice the figure approaching until a shadow fell across her screen. She looked up to see a Vorthan standing beside her terminal. His tentacled face was impossible to read, but his body language seemed friendly. "Dr. Hayes, isn't it?" The Vorthan said in accented English. "I am Kickstall. I deal in ... information." Lisa saved her work and turned to face him. "What kind of information?" "The kind that keeps people alive," Kickstall said, his tentacles writhing slightly. "I have been watching your crew since you arrived. You are in danger." "What kind of danger?" "They. Corvin kind. Admiral Vex Carr is not satisfied with embarrassing you in public. He plans to follow your ship when you leave the station." Lisa's heart skipped a beat. "Follow us? Why?" "To board your vessel. To search it. To find out what makes humans so successful in space." Kickstall's tentacles curled in what might have been a smile. "He believes you are hiding something important." "And what do you believe?" "I believe that information is valuable. And I believe that your captain should know about the Admiral's plans." Lisa stood up quickly. "I have to warn him." "Wait." Kickstall touched her arm gently with one tentacle. "There is something else. Something you should know about your own species." W. The loading of Terra's Pride took 6 hours. Cargo containers filled with rare minerals from the Centauri system were loaded into the ship's hold by automated systems. Jake watched the process from the bridge, but his mind was elsewhere. He kept thinking about the warnings they had received and the hostile looks from other species. "Last container is secure," Pete reported from the cargo bay. "We're ready to go whenever you are, Captain." Jake nodded and opened the ship's communication system. "Kepler Station Control. This is Terra's Pride requesting departure clearance." "Terra's Pride, you are cleared for departure. Safe travels." The words were polite, but Jake could hear the doubt in the controller's voice. Even the station staff questioned how humans had managed to build working starships. "Amy, take us out. Nice and easy." Amy's fingers moved across her control panel, and the ship began to move. The docking clamps released with a soft thud, and Terra's Pride drifted away from the station. Through the windows, Jake could see other ships going about their business. Most of them looked sleek and modern compared to his old cargo hauler. "Course set for New Boston," Amy reported. "Travel time at current speed will be 4 days." Jake was about to respond when Pete's voice came over the intercom. "Captain, You need to see this. We've got company. Jake hurried to the rear observation deck, where Pete was standing at a small window. In the distance, 3 dark shapes were moving away from the station. They were Corvin warships, long and sharp like knives cutting through space. They're following us, Pete said grimly. Jake studied the ships through a pair of binoculars. They were keeping their distance, but they were definitely matching Terra's Pride's course and speed. Are you sure? Been watching them for 10 minutes. Every time we change direction, they change too. They're not even trying to hide it. Jake felt his stomach tighten. This was exactly what the Vorthan information broker had warned them about. Admiral Vexcar was making his move. How long until they catch up? Jake asked. Pete checked his instruments. At their current speed, about 2 hours. But Captain, those are military vessels. They're faster than us, better armed, and they've got more people. If they want to board us, there's not much we can do to stop them. Jake nodded slowly. He had been hoping it wouldn't come to this, but it seemed like they had run out of options. Call the crew to the bridge. All hands. Within minutes, the entire crew of Terra's Pride was gathered in the small bridge. 12 people in total, all of them experienced space travelers. They looked worried but determined. We're being followed, Jake said without preamble. 3 Corvin warships. They're probably planning to board us and search the ship. Search for what? Asked Tony Martinez, the ship's communications officer. For whatever they think makes us so good at space travel, Dr. Hayes said. They don't believe we developed our technology naturally. So what do we do? Amy asked. We can't outrun them. And we sure can't fight them. Jake looked around at his crew. These were good people, all of them. They had signed up for cargo hauling, not warfare. But they were also more than they appeared to be, just like their ship. We could try to hide, suggested Maria Santos, the ship's computer specialist. There's an asteroid field near the Titan Nebula. If we can make it there, we might be able to lose them. That's 50 light years away, Pete said. They'll catch us long before we get there. Not if we push the engines, Jake said quietly. Pete stared at him. Captain, these engines weren't designed for that kind of stress. We push them too hard, and we'll blow the whole ship apart. Will we? Jake asked, his voice calm. There was something in his tone that made the entire crew stop and look at him. Amy was the first to understand. Captain, she said slowly, what exactly are you suggesting? Jake looked around at his crew one more time. They had been together for years, had shared dangers and adventures across the galaxy. They trusted him, and he trusted them. But what he was about to ask them to do would change everything. I'm suggesting we stop pretending, Jake said simply. The bridge fell silent. Outside, the stars wheeled slowly past as Terra's Pride continued on its course. Behind them, the Corvin warships grew steadily closer. How long have you known? Dr. Hayes asked quietly. Known what? That we're not who we pretend to be. That this ship isn't what it appears to be. Jake smiled sadly. Lisa, I've known since the day I took command. The question is, how long have you known? Dr. Hayes laughed, but there was no humor in it. About 2 years. Little things that didn't add up. Equipment that was too advanced for a cargo hauler. Medical supplies that were military grade. And the way you handled yourself in dangerous situations. You weren't just a cargo captain. Neither were any of you, Jake said. Amy, you're not just a navigator. You're a tactical officer with 15 years of experience. Pete, you're not just an engineer. You're a specialist in advanced propulsion systems. And Lisa, you're not just a doctor. You're a xenobiologist with clearance to study alien technology. One by one, the crew members nodded. The pretense was finally over. So what are we really? Tony asked. We're intelligence operatives, Jake said. Deep cover. Terra's Pride isn't a cargo hauler. It's a reconnaissance vessel designed to look like a civilian ship while we gather information about alien governments, military capabilities, and technology. And the cargo? Maria asked. Real. It helps maintain our cover. But the real mission is to observe and report, to map alien defenses and study their weaknesses. Amy pulled up a star chart on her console. Every cargo run we've made has taken us through strategic locations. Trade routes, military bases, shipyards. We've been gathering intelligence the whole time. But why the secrecy? Pete asked. Why not just tell us from the beginning? Jake sighed. Because the mission required complete authenticity. You had to believe you were civilian cargo haulers. Or you couldn't sell the lie to everyone else. Your reactions, your stress levels, your behavior, it all had to be real. And now? Dr. Hayes asked. Now the mission parameters have changed. The Corvins are about to discover what we really are. Anyway, we can either maintain the cover and get boarded, or we can drop it and get out of here. The crew exchanged glances. It was a lot to process. Years of thinking they were one thing, only to discover they were something else entirely. What about the other human ships? Amy asked. The ones the aliens think are primitive cargo haulers? What do you think? Jake asked. The realization hit them all at once. The entire human merchant fleet was fake. Every ship that looked old and unreliable was actually a sophisticated intelligence-gathering vessel. Humanity had been playing a massive deception game for years. My God, Tony whispered. How many ships are there? Classified, Jake said. But enough to map most of the galaxy's major powers. And they all think we're primitive, Maria said, beginning to smile. They think we barely know how to build a working starship, while we've been studying their technology and mapping their defenses, Pete added. That's brilliant. And completely crazy. It's about to get crazier, Amy said, checking her instruments. The Corvins are closing fast. Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it now. Jake took a deep breath. All right, everyone. Time to see what this ship can really do. Pete, I want you to unlock the real engine controls. Amy, prepare to plot. A course for the Titan Nebula at maximum speed. Maria, start jamming their communications. I don't want them calling for backup. And if they still try to board us, Tony asked, then we show them what happens when you threaten a human ship. Jake said grimly. Lisa, unseal the weapon systems. Amy, prepare for evasive maneuvers. The crew moved with sudden efficiency. Their casual, civilian manner was gone, replaced by military precision. Panels slid open to reveal advanced controls that had been hidden beneath false surfaces. The bridges. Lighting changed from soft white to tactical blue. Engines are coming online, Pete reported. Real engines, not the fake ones we've been using. We've got power levels that would make a Corvin cruiser jealous. Communications are jammed, Maria added. They can't call for help. Weapons are ready, Dr. Hayes said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were doing. Defensive systems are charging. Jake settled into his captain's chair, which had transformed into something that looked more like a command. Station. Amy, when I give the word, I want you to accelerate to maximum speed. Show them what human engineering can really do. Amy's hands hovered over her controls. Ready, Captain? Behind them, the Corvin warships had closed to within firing range. Their weapons were powering up, and Jake could see smaller ships launching from their bays. Boarding parties ready to take control of the primitive human vessel. They're hailing. U.S., Tony reported. Admiral Vexcar wants us to surrender. Put him through, Jake said. The Admiral's scarred face appeared on the main screen. His single eye glowed with satisfaction. Captain Morrison, you will shut down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Resistance is futile. I'm afraid I can't. Do that, Admiral, Jake said calmly. You have no choice. You are outgunned and outnumbered. Surrender now, and your crew will be treated well. Jake smiled. Admiral, you've made a mistake. You think you're chasing a cargo hauler. You're not. Thexkar's eye narrowed. What are you talking about? Amy, Jake said simply. Now, the transformation was instant. Terra's Pride's engines ignited with power that lit. 3 hours had passed since Terra's Pride had escaped from the Corvin ships. The human vessel was now deep in space, approaching the edge of the Titan Nebula. The swirling clouds of gas and dust stretched across millions of miles, creating a natural barrier that would hide them from most sensors. But Admiral Thexkar was not ready to give up. Status report, he demanded from the bridge of his flagship. We've broken through their jamming, his communications officer reported. Messages are being sent to Corvin Command and to our allies. They will know about the human deception within. Ours? Good. And our pursuit? We're still following them, but they maintain a significant speed advantage. However, we're close enough for detailed scans. Thexkar's scarred face twisted into a cruel smile. Excellent. I want to know everything about that ship. Every bolt, every wire, every system. When we catch them, I want to be prepared. Yes. Admiral, beginning deep-level scan now. The Corvin scanning technology was among the best in the galaxy. Their sensors could penetrate most forms of shielding and reveal the inner workings of any vessel. What they found aboard Terra's Pride should have been simple. Cargo holds, basic life support, primitive engines. Instead, the sensor operator stared at his screen in growing disbelief. Admiral, he said, his voice shaking slightly. You need to see this. Thexkar moved to the sensor station and looked at the display. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he grabbed the operator by the shoulders. Run the scan again, he ordered. There must be an error. I've run it 3 times, sir. The results are the same. Thexkar stared at the impossible data streaming across his screen. According to the sensors, Terra's Pride was not a cargo hauler at all. It was something far more dangerous. Get me a full tactical analysis, he said quietly. I want to know exactly what we're dealing with. The results came back within minutes, and they were terrifying. The ship's hull was not made of standard metal alloys. Instead, it was constructed from compressed neutronium, a material so dense and strong that it was virtually indestructible. The armor plating alone was worth more than most planets' entire economic output. The engines were not the primitive fusion drives they appeared to be. They were quantum fold generators, capable of bending space-time itself. This technology was beyond anything the Corvin Empire possessed. The weapon systems were hidden throughout the ship's structure, disguised as normal components. But the scans revealed enough firepower to level a small moon. Particle beam cannons, plasma torpedoes, and energy shields that could withstand a direct hit from a battle station. But the most shocking discovery was in the cargo hold. Admiral, a tactical officer said, his voice barely above a whisper. The cargo... it's not minerals. What is it? People, sir. Humans, but not civilians. These are soldiers, Marines, and they're in some kind of suspended animation. There are over 300 of them. Thexkar felt his blood turn to ice. 300 human soldiers, hidden aboard a ship that was supposed to be carrying rocks and metal. This was not a cargo hauler that had stumbled onto advanced technology. This was a military vessel on a secret mission. How many ships like this do the humans have? He asked. Unknown, sir. But if this is representative of their merchant fleet, Thexkar didn't need him to finish the thought. The human merchant fleet consisted of thousands of ships, all traveling throughout the galaxy. If even a fraction of them were military vessels in disguise, then humanity had been playing a game of deception on a scale that was almost unimaginable. Send. A priority message to all Corvan forces, Vexcar ordered. Every human ship is to be considered a potential military threat. And get me a direct line to the Emperor. But before his communications officer could respond, every screen on the bridge lit up with an incoming transmission. The signals coming from Terra's Pride. Captain Jake Morrison's face appeared on the main screen. But he looked different now. Gone was the tired, defeated expression of a simple cargo hauler. In its place was the calm, confident demeanor of a military officer. Admiral Vexcar, Jake said, his voice steady and controlled. I believe you have some questions. Vexcar found his voice. What are you? I'm exactly what I've always been. A human starship captain. The question is, what did you think I was? You're military. This is a warship. Jake smiled, but there was no warmth in it. This is a reconnaissance vessel. One of many. We've been watching you, Admiral. Watching all of you. Watching us? For what purpose? To learn. To understand. To prepare. Jake leaned forward in his chair. You see, Admiral, when humanity first ventured into space, we discovered something interesting. The galaxy is full of predators. Species that have conquered and enslaved others. Species that see newer civilizations as threats to be eliminated. Vexcar's jaw tightened. You're talking about the Corvan Empire, among others, so we made a decision. We would not announce our presence with fanfare. We would not reveal our true capabilities. Instead, we would appear weak while we learned everything we could about our potential enemies. Enemies? Vexcar snarled. We offered you trade agreements, diplomatic relations. You offered us the same thing you offer all younger species. Subjugation disguised as partnership. We've seen your history, Admiral. We know what happens to civilizations that trust the Corvan Empire. The bridge of the Corvan flagship fell silent. Everyone was listening to this conversation, and everyone understood the implications. You've been spying on us, Vexcar said. We've been protecting ourselves, Jake corrected. Every time one of our cargo haulers visited a Corvan world, we learned something new. Your ship designs, your military strategies, your weapon capabilities. We mapped your trade routes, your supply lines, your defensive positions. That's impossible. We would have detected your activities. Jake laughed, and the sound was chilling. Admiral, you've been so busy looking down on us that you never bothered to look closely at us. Every human ship you've encountered has been gathering intelligence. Every trade deal, every diplomatic meeting, every casual conversation, it was all part of a larger plan. What plan? To be ready when species like yours finally showed their true colors. To be prepared when the masks came off and the real threats emerged. Vexcar felt a cold dread settling in his stomach. How many ships? How many ships what, Admiral? How many ships like yours are there? Jake's smile widened. All of them. The words hit the Corvan bridge like a physical blow. All of them. Every human cargo hauler, every transport vessel, every civilian ship that had been traveling through the galaxy for years. They were all military vessels in disguise. You're lying, Vexcar said, but his voice lacked conviction. Am I? Think about it, Admiral. How did a species that just discovered space travel manage to build ships that could compete with yours? How did we learn to navigate interstellar space so quickly? How did we establish trade relationships with dozens of different civilizations? In such a short time? The questions that had been nagging at alien governments for years suddenly had answers. Disturbing answers. You had help, Vexcar said desperately. Another species gave you the technology. No, Admiral. We built it ourselves. We took your technology, studied it, and made it better. Much better. That's impossible. Is it? You've seen our scan results. You know what this ship is capable of, and this is just one vessel from our merchant fleet. Imagine what our actual military ships can do. Dexkar's mind raced. If the humans had been deceiving the galaxy for years, if their seemingly primitive ships were actually advanced military vessels, then everything the Corvan Empire thought they knew about humanity was wrong. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "What we've always wanted. To be left alone, to trade peacefully, to exist without being threatened by species that think might makes right. And if we refuse?" Jake's expression hardened. "Then you'll discover. What happens when you threaten a species that's been preparing for war while you've been busy underestimating them? You're threatening the Corvan Empire? I'm stating facts. Your empire spans hundreds of worlds. You have millions of soldiers and thousands of ships. But you've also made a lot of enemies over the centuries. And now you've made one more." Dexkar realized that the balance of power in the galaxy had just shifted dramatically. The humans were not the weak, primitive species everyone had assumed them to be. They were something far more dangerous, a technologically advanced civilization that had been secretly preparing for conflict. "This changes everything," he said quietly. "Yes," Jake agreed. "It does. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Before Dexkar could respond, his sensor officer called out in alarm. "Admiral, we're detecting multiple contacts. Ships approaching from all directions. How many? Dozens. Maybe hundreds. They're coming out of hyperspace all around us." Dexkar turned to the tactical display and felt his blood freeze. Human ships were appearing throughout the star system, dropping out of faster-than-light travel with military precision. Ships that looked like cargo haulers and civilian transports, but which he now knew were actually sophisticated military vessels. "You called for backup," he said to Jake. "I called for witnesses," Jake corrected. "Every major news network in the galaxy is about to receive a very interesting transmission. The age of secrets is over, Admiral. Humanity is about to introduce itself to the galaxy properly." Admiral Dexkar stared at the tactical display in disbelief. Dozens of human ships surrounded his 3 warships, all of them appearing to be civilian vessels, but now revealed as military craft. The balance of power had shifted completely, and he found himself in the uncomfortable position of being outgunned and outnumbered. "Admiral," his weapons officer said nervously, "what are your orders?" Dexkar's pride warred with his common sense. The Corvan Empire had never backed down from a fight and never shown weakness to lesser species. But the scan results were impossible to ignore. These human ships were more advanced than anything in the Corvan fleet. "Maintain defensive positions," he said finally, "but keep weapons ready." On the bridge of Terra's Pride, Captain Jake Morrison watched the Corvan ships with calm patience. His crew was at battle stations, but their weapons were not targeted. This was a demonstration, not an attack. "Captain," Amy Rodriguez said from her station, "we're receiving transmissions from all over the galaxy. News networks, government officials, military commands. Everyone wants to know what's happening here." "Good," Jake said. "That's exactly what we want. Maria, are you ready to broadcast?" Maria Santos nodded from her communication station. "All channels are open. Every major news network in the galaxy will receive our transmission simultaneously." "Then let's tell them the truth." Jake activated the main communication system. His image would now be broadcast to billions of beings across hundreds of worlds. The moment that would change everything had arrived. "Citizens of the galaxy," he began, his voice steady and confident. "My name is Captain Jake Morrison of the U.E.'s Terra's Pride. For the past 5 years, I have been traveling among you under false pretenses. Today, That deception ends. In government buildings across the galaxy, emergency sessions were called. Military commanders gathered around screens, watching in fascination and growing alarm. The ship you see behind me appears to be a simple cargo hauler, Jake continued. For years, it has visited your worlds, your stations, your trade routes. It has been mocked, dismissed, and underestimated. But Terra's pride is not what it seems. He paused, letting the tension build. This vessel is actually the UES Retribution, a deep space reconnaissance ship operated by the United Earth Defense Force. Its mission has been to gather intelligence on potential threats to human colonies and trade routes. The reaction was immediate. On Corvin worlds, military alerts sounded. On Zephyrian planets, emergency councils convened. Throughout the galaxy, the implications of Jake's words were being calculated and analyzed. But Terra's pride is not alone. Jake continued. Every human ship you have encountered, every cargo hauler and transport vessel, every civilian craft that has seemed primitive and inefficient, they are all military vessels operating under deep cover. Admiral Vexcar felt his stomach drop. He had suspected this, but hearing it confirmed was still a shock. We have been watching you, Jake said, his voice taking on a harder edge. Learning about your governments, your military capabilities, your intentions toward younger species. And what we have learned has been ... disturbing. Sir, the Corvin communications officer said quietly. Should we jam the transmission? No, Vexcar said grimly. A damage is already done. Let him finish. Jake's image filled screens across the galaxy as he continued his revelation. We have documented acts of aggression against peaceful species. We have recorded plans for conquest and subjugation. We have seen what happens to civilizations that trust the wrong allies. In the Zephyrian capital, Commander Velther watched the transmission with growing understanding. He had suspected that the humans were more than they appeared, but the scope of their deception was impressive. So we made a choice, Jake said. We chose to appear weak while we prepared for the day when our true strength would be needed. That day has arrived. He gestured to the ships surrounding the Corvin vessels. These are not cargo haulers. They are reconnaissance vessels, each one equipped with weapons and defenses that surpass anything in your fleets. They have been mapping your trade routes, studying your military installations, and preparing for this moment. This is madness, Vexcar muttered. One species cannot stand against the entire galaxy. But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't true. The humans had been preparing for years, gathering intelligence while everyone else dismissed them as primitives. They had turned the galaxy's arrogance against itself. We do not seek war, Jake continued. We seek peace. But it will be peace on equal terms, not the subjugation that many of you have offered. Humanity will no longer hide its true nature. He paused, his expression becoming deadly serious. Admiral Vexcar of the Corvin Empire, your ships are ordered to stand down. You have threatened human vessels and planned acts of piracy against our merchant fleet. This ends now. On the Corvin flagship, Vexcar's face flushed with rage. I will not be ordered around by a primitive species. Sir, his tactical officer said urgently, they're powering weapons. All of them? The display showed energy readings spiking across the human fleet. Weapons that had been hidden were now revealed, their power signatures dwarfing anything the Corvins possessed. Stand down, Admiral. Jake's voice came over the communication. System, this is your final warning. Vexcar's hand moved to his weapon controls. All ships, target the human vessels. Prepare to fire. Sir, his weapons officer said, the energy readings. If we fire on them, they'll destroy us. The Corvin Empire does not surrender to anyone. Vexcar's finger hovered over the fire control. Around him, His crew watched in tense silence. They were about to start a war that could reshape the galaxy. Fire! Dexcar shouted. The Corvin warships opened fire simultaneously, their weapons striking the human vessels with enough force to destroy a small city. The space around Terra's Pride lit up with explosions and energy discharges. When the light faded, the human ships were undamaged. Their shields had absorbed the attack completely. Impressive, Jake said calmly. Now it's our turn. The human response was swift and precise. Instead of destroying the Corvin ships, they systematically disabled them. Weapons were surgically removed, engines were shut down, and communication arrays were severed. Within 90 seconds, 3 of the galaxy's most advanced warships had been reduced to helpless hulks. No casualties, Jake announced. We do not kill unless we have no choice. But we will defend ourselves against any threat. Admiral Dexcar stared at his darkened control panels in shock. His ships had been neutralized so quickly and efficiently that his crew barely had time to react. The humans had demonstrated their superiority without unnecessary bloodshed. This is impossible, he whispered. This is the new reality. Jake's voice came through the emergency communication system. Your ships will be towed to the nearest neutral station. Your crews will be unharmed. But your government will receive a message about the consequences of threatening human vessels. Across the galaxy, the reaction to the demonstration was immediate and dramatic. Some species called for immediate military action against the humans. Others demanded diplomatic conferences. A few wise leaders began drafting new policies for dealing with humanity as equals rather than inferiors. Citizens of the galaxy, Jake continued his broadcast, humanity extends an offer of friendship to all peaceful species. We wish to trade, to learn, to grow together. But we will not be conquered, enslaved, or destroyed. He looked directly into the camera, his expression resolute. For too long, you have seen us as primitive, weak, and defenseless. You have mocked our ships, questioned our capabilities, and plotted against our people. Today, that ends. The transmission reached every corner of known space. On 1,000 worlds in 1,000,000 cities, beings watched as the balance of galactic power shifted forever. We are not the naive species you believed us to be, Jake said. We are the children of a world where survival meant adaptation, where showing weakness was often the path to victory. We have learned from every species we have encountered, improved upon every technology we have studied, and prepared for every threat we have identified. He paused, letting his words sink in. The galaxy now has a choice. You can accept humanity as equals and partners, working together for mutual benefit. Or you can continue to see us as enemies and discover just how dangerous a truly advanced species can be. The broadcast ended, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. The age of human deception was over. In its place was something far more challenging, the age of human honesty. On Terra's Pride, Jake turned to his crew. Well done, everyone. Signal the fleet to return to their assignments. We have a lot of work to do. What kind of work? Amy asked. The kind that comes with no longer hiding who we are. We're going to have to rebuild our relationships with half the galaxy. Some species will want to be our friends. Others will want to be our enemies. We need to be ready for both. As the human fleet began to disperse, each ship returning to its cover mission, Jake reflected on what they had accomplished. The secret was out, but that was only the beginning. Now came the hard part, living with the consequences of their revelation. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy began to adjust to its new reality. The Corvin Empire, humbled by their defeat, entered into tense negotiations with human representatives. The Zephyrian Confederation offered formal diplomatic recognition. Other spec